Oh, hi, folks. Welcome to the Mental Health Warriors. I am Mary, your humble leader, and today I have a guest coming on that is just amazing. For your reference, we use Spotify, Amazon, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram as places you can follow us, as well as other areas, YouTube and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and start my show. Hey, welcome to sunny Nebraska. I'm your host, Mary, your humble leader, and welcome to sunny Lincoln, Nebraska. Um, I have a guest that's running a little behind, so I'm going to fill in a little bit with how's your mental health today? How are you feeling, and how are things going for you today? And So, I personally am enjoying the beautiful November 1st weather and taking the opportunity to soak up a few extra rays before Time Change Sunday is coming up. For those of you who change your clocks, they go back an hour on Sunday. So, for those of you who do not know me, I work with autistic individuals as well as I work with veterans. And so that is kind of the areas that I am an expert in. I spend multiple opportunities to deal with the autism side for part of my day, and then I visit with veterans and stuff as far as the other part of my day goes. So that's kind of where I'm at. I became a part of the mental health warriors because I believe both veterans and autistic people definitely deal with the mental health part of that, being caregivers and trauma and different areas like that. And so that's kind of how I direct my paths and stuff. So um, just part of who I am. I have three boys on the spectrum as well as myself, and more than likely my husband as well. So we deal with multiple areas of different um, directions on how to go with that, and lead with by example with that. Along with being a humble leader, I'm a side by side leader, so I spent some time with dealing with that, and I am just glad to be part of that. So that's how I deal with that. So, well, let me welcome my guest here. I am joined by Dr. Janice Brooks, and here I am, Dr. Brooks, in a reverse role. I did this with two of my other mentors. You guys interviewed me on podcasts, so I guess it's my turn to reverse the roles and interview you. Having learned a lot from you and my other mentors, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself because more than likely you have a much quicker way of doing it than I do, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Let me just make sure my microphone is good. Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. I'm happy to be here. I am Dr. Janice Brooks, as you have said. And in a nutshell, I'm a life strategist. I'm a licensed clinical pastoral counselor, and I'm also a temperament certified temperament counselor as well. And in a nutshell, what I do, I help persons just to overcome, manage the different emotions that life brings to them. We do know that human beings cannot separate themselves from their spiritual, emotional, and their physical needs, which means that once we're living, breathing, we have some challenges to face. And basically, that's what I do. I help them to face those challenges and overcome them as best as possible.
Ah, nice. I really like that. Dr. Janice, she also hosts an amazing fireside chat. I've just asked her if I could come back because she has such amazing people on there. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to return and have another fireside chat with you as well.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Brooks, I know you're from Florida and you're originally from the Bahamas. I know Hurricane Ian just went through that area and stuff. Can you tell us how that kind of dealt with how you dealt with your mental health and your family's mental health as you were going through that?
As a matter of fact, you said Bahamas, but it's actually Jamaica. And that's okay because sometimes we're together in the Caribbean, so sometimes we do get the different names muddled together. But I don't even want to say it's ironic, but it's so funny. Let me say that at the time when the hurricane was heading to Florida, it also had to pass Jamaica. And I was actually in Jamaica at that time when it was when it was passing. And so we were saved in Jamaica. We didn't have, any much of a challenge over there. And when I came back home in Florida, it went the westerly side, so it didn't bother me in my side. I'm mostly to the east of where I live in Florida. But as with any other form of tragedy or expecting tragedy or trauma, people tend to get anxious, fearful, and doubting as to what will happen. And so most of the times you just have to use that time to just help persons to stay calm and to make the different plans and preparation that they need to make instead of getting anxious. We plan, we prepare, and that was what really worked. Let me say it like that.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I'm a little directionally challenged, you see, being in the middle of the United States. Sometimes I'm geography challenged. But I also have another mentor that's from around the Bahamas. So I got you all in the same area at least.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
so, so I guess for me, having you kind of as a mentor and chatting back and forth and stuff, one of my biggest questions is for you is when you're talking to people and working with people, like let's just even say within the businesses and stuff that we all do, how what kind of leader are you to them, do you think?
So one of the most important thing in my field of work, Mary, is listening. Listening is one of the most important thing. Even before I go to anything about a type of leader, we have to be able to practice active listening. When you're doing anything to do with counseling and coaching and anything like that, the first thing is listening. And the second thing is to make sure that you ask the right questions. Um, there are so many things that can pass you by, little things that you might think is a small thing, and it passes you by, and it's a big thing because you were not listening properly, practicing active listening. We tend sometimes, many of us who wear both hats, because I'm a licensed counselor and I'm also a coach, we tend most times to not being able to separate the two. And so we tend to want to give advice, always giving advice, but we always have to remember listening is the most important part of this, because that's when we're going to be able to hear in order to ask the right questions. And boy, there are some questions that you need to ask in order to get the answers.
Well, and I think a lot of it, especially coming from me, who I've just basically spent the last couple of years doing podcasts, and now I host my own podcast and stuff. The biggest thing was for me was I'm scared to ask that question because, in our lifetime we've been told no, 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 or I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Oh, I've done that, or I've done that, but I don't think in our heads we listen deep enough. And being in a family of all boys and having all brothers, it's a different setting when you have all guys as opposed to females. And so can you kind of dive into the difference between dealing with maybe a male coach or male client and a female client as to how you would do it differently?
Okay. All right. So, one of the things I do know with men, and this is not to drop any bomb anywhere, but many a times men are more private than women.
Yep.
And so you have, and also men need to know that you are qualified to speak in the position that you're speaking to them in. I don't want to think that it's a little kind of ego thing, but it's because I study temperament, uh, and it's one of my specialization. I know that most of the times they want these two things. They want to know that you're qualified to speak with them, and they want to know that whatever they say to you will be held in total privacy. We men, as we know, most of us, we will go along and we will, you know, bear everything at the same time without even being asked. We will open everything at one time. Men, you literally have to go step by step. When you ask a question, you give them time to process it and to answer that. And you don't overshadow them with more than one question or comment at one time. So they are a little different. Mostly men, most of them are a little different in how they manage their coaching or counseling sessions.
Okay, you can only imagine what I'm like from a mother's perspective and a wife perspective, then, as well as a sister. So I know, my husband and I, we would communicate, but I think now that I've started doing a lot more of my stuff with autism and the veterans side and sharing my knowledge with him about what I do with like you and like Adam and the other folks that I have that I work with, um, it does. It's no. He notices it. He goes, "You don't. You don't. You listen to me. You don't speak to answer. You listen or listen to answer. You listen. Listen." I still interrupt him, especially if I have that trigger moment. But that's my husband. I try to control it when I'm doing stuff with other people within my industry and stuff. But yeah, I like that because you're exactly right. On the male end, I have a 33, a 24, and a 20-year-old, as well as a 57-year-old male in my family. So I get different levels of how to do it. But yeah, so it's one of those things where I just sit there and I'm like, wow, you just give me some duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop talking. And we've got some guys that are Adam's listening. He's actually my producer, boss, whatever you want to call him, for the Mental Health Warriors. And Robert from Facebook is listening to us as well. He was kind of giggling at when we were talking about the men aspects and the two steps that we need to take. So we had those comments on there too. But Dr. Janice, what kind of consulting do you do and coaching? What is your business as far as that goes? I mean, is it to coach to be a business person, or is it coaching just because people need the help with, like, let's say, trauma and stuff like that?
Well, that's such a great question because many times persons would come to me with a different a gamut of things. Why? Because many of them know that I spent 28 years in banking. And so I started in my early days as a front desk clerk in banking. And when I left banking, I was many years as an assistant vice president. So I had to deal with so many things, business, personal, everything. So people would come to me for different things. But if I was to go directly to my area of that I specialize in, I am a part of the John Maxwell team of certified leadership trainers. So I do that as part of what I do. On the other side of counseling, I love temperament. And the reason why I love temperament so much is because this is the inborn part of a person that really dictates how they deal with different circumstances, people, places, things. And sometimes we would look at a person who would, you know, probably say, what is his problem? Or what is her problem? I don't like how that person acts. But if you go to the root of it, you realize that this is a temperament issue. The person may be, say, for example, a sanguine, who is what we would call a kind of a type A personality person. They're just always out there, bubbly talking. Meanwhile, the other person could be a phlegmatic, just in a corner, not saying. And so I like to really study the different types of personalities. We call them temperament, and coach from that aspect so that persons know that there's no two of you. You are uniquely who you are.
Yes, yes. So when you, let's just say you take somebody that's kind of quiet in that, coming from a standpoint of being a person that was in customer service, and I worked with Walmart and stuff for over 20 years. But as far as I would take a quiet person and just lead by example. I don't know from your method. I just start from the basic things. Hey, how you doing? If you don't want me here, I won't be here. But how do you bring somebody that is quiet and reserved and bring them forward then? Because I really honestly think the people that don't say a lot, they truly know a lot. And so
Yeah. And that's such a great question again, Mary, because what I try to do, as I said before, is to use the questions as my base and the listening. So someone walk in and I realize that person is more on the quiet side of things. So simple question like, I'm seeing this person for the first time. They're just coming to my office for the first time. I'm asking them simple questions like, what brought you here today? What would you like to talk about? And I listen for the answers. What's the real challenge that you're having at this point in time? And they answer when I say, and what else? So I keep drilling down because I want them to open up. But they are a quieter person, so they will not tell me 10 things at one time. So it's definitely going to be my questioning that is going to help them to open up little by little until we get to a place where we're more comfortable.
right, yeah, I think it's getting on that personal level. I know for myself, the big thing for me is, I might be standing in front of a group of people for, let's say, an autism presentation. I think for me, it's a lot of commonality. I do speak to people who have different areas of expertise because I think in the long run, it's going to help me just to understand people. And so, yeah, I get that. It's almost like building a foundation and building a house. Yeah. So yeah, I can appreciate that because I have sons like that. I've built foundations, and I've got one we're stuck in the middle level. So I have my friend Annette Chappie. She has just joined us, and yeah, and Robert's joining us from Facebook. I'm still learning to multitask all these people and comments.
You're doing so well. You are actually so well. I mean, you look like you're better than me on the technology side of things. But you're doing so well. And just to mention, I love what you do because you see, this is where the specialization comes in at time because you know on the different spectrum where people fall on your side and you're able to meet them at the level where they are. And so that is not a every person thing. That is someone who actually has that awareness and that deep sense of desire to to want to help another person. So they are able to hear them and to meet them at their point. So thank you too for the work that you do.
Oh, you're most welcome. It's it's one of those things where I've kind of got a spot where I'm just kind of mellow, and I've talked with some of my warriors about. I've done a lot of podcasting. I've got a lot of information out there, so now I'm trying to bring the level of consulting up to the dollar amounts that I need. But you know, if it came down to it and somebody need help and stuff, I'm still going to help them, but I'm at a point where I need to collide the two together. But I honestly, I love doing the podcast. My introductions are always, I always tell them, you know what, I am me, and what you see is what you get, you know, and definitely the humble leader part. I have learned to just, even when I do my presentations afterwards, you know, I will go stand literally by myself because if people have questions, they're going to come ask you those questions. And I um, appreciate your compliments. Sometimes those aren't easy for some of us to take, but I'm learning to get better at that because a true compliment means everything to me. And so, but yeah, so I have to ask. I haven't asked this question before. I don't think I've even asked you. Or are you married? Do you have a family?
Actually, I do have a family. I'm not married. I have, I mean, let me say I'm not married now. Because at some point in time I was, but I do have two big ladies. As a matter of fact, my last just had a baby 4 months ago, so I got a grandson, and she's actually almost 30 years old. So yes.
Nice, nice, nice. I'm going to put this up here. Annette wants to know this. She showed up late, but she wants to know the answer to this question.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for that question. So, a temperament counselor, in a nutshell, is a counselor who counsels, and it could be a temperament coach as well. The temperament counselor or the temperament coach counsels uh, based on our belief that every human being is made up of three different sides. They're spiritual, they're emotional, and their physical side. So you could break it down: the emotional needs, the physical needs, and the spiritual needs. And we believe that that is a person on a whole, and you can't separate the three. If you're going to be counseling someone, you should counsel them in this way, where all their needs are met. And so that's the temperament counselor. We believe that each human, each person has an inborn tendency or an inborn trait as to how they deal with people, places, and things. They have the different triggers. They may go to a movie and something trigger them. They may see water and something trigger them. They may have an upbeat personality. Different things, the spiritual, the physical, and the mental needs must be met in order for the person to live a fulfilled life. So we counsel considering those three things.
Ah, that's great because Annette, I believe Annette might have to write in the comments exactly what she does, but she's one of our show hosts too. I have a feeling she might hit me up to see see about talking with you further. But I believe she is meditation. And Annette, if you're listening, can you put in the comments what you do? I know I've been on her show too. Annette does a lot of stuff along that same lines, as well as my other lady that co-hosts with Adam. She does a lot of stuff with missing and indigenous women and stuff too. So I have some really neat folks around me. In fact, Andrea only lives like 2 miles from me, so we've discussed. Um, so here's her answer to your explanation, Dr. Janice. So.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so much for that, Miss Annette. About 3 weeks ago, because I do a lot of work, even on the weekends, I call them sessions. So I have like 1 hour sessions. And I remember this person was coming to me for the first time. And when she left this session, she sent a voice note, and it really made me drop a tear or two. And she said she has been to many therapists and counselors and whoever. But she said it's the first time that someone tried to know who I am before they start counseling me. It's the first time somebody put all my needs together before they start counseling me. And it really made me feel good that this person, was benefited from what they came and got. And so, yes, that is where I believe it should all start. We shouldn't just try to counsel or coach someone in one area and then leave out all the other areas of their life, because our life is intertwined, every area.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. And I do it. I don't do it like that, but I think, and like you and I have a bit of a history together, but I like meeting people where they're at, because if they're just having this fire flame of a day, it's like, okay, so talk to me. And I truly believe when you say talk to me, that means be quiet. And so on the same hand, when some people are just going and going and going, and you try to interrupt them, I think you're going to cause two things. You're going to upset them, and you're going to cause a massive trigger, and then all of a sudden you have shutdown. And so I really like how you address that, because again, I take people at their current position, and I, being a big picture person first, like I've seen my business how I want it to look, and I bring it back. It's the same way with talking to somebody that's having an issue. I look at the big issue, and then I try to go back. Okay, what triggered this? Why are we having this discussion? I may have only just talked to them an hour before, but now we've got this big, huge mess. And that's why I always tell people, even when I was working in retail, I like to be a side by side leader. Let's do this together.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I can really appreciate from where you're coming from to how to do that. And I knew Annette would love that. And she said, just, I think we as CEOs or advocate, wherever we're at, or leader, wherever we're at, I think we just need to be able to express to the people that we're working with that when I say I'm here to help, mean it. I mean, if it's 2 a.m. and you're texting me, first of all, I hope I hear it, because usually at 2 I'm pretty sound asleep. But if you're texting me for help, when you're saying on a platform like this, I'm here to help, if somebody messages me, I better back that up. Mm-hmm. Not, oh, I need 10 minutes because of this, or this. I've literally said, I'll help you. And that's how I want to be. Annette has another one I want to show you. Annette's really good with questions. Annette, can you put your handle in what you do for mental health warriors?
Okay, yes. And that is why, thank you so much for that, Miss Annette. And that is why when I talk about what I do not lean on the side of mental health counselor, because I'm really not a mental health counselor. If you see it in that way, I'm not a mental health counselor. Because mental health um, practitioners, let me use that name, many of them are able to refer or recommend medication. And in my line of work, we do not do that. We try to drill down, and this is not to say that that is not necessary at times, because it is really necessary if you go over to that spectrum, the mental health spectrum. But we try to drill down into the person's needs, and out of those needs, many a times we realize that this is where the challenge really is once we start drilling down.
Yeah, I like that. I think, yeah, yeah. Basically, it's a situation with yourself where once you have the client and you're starting to drill down and they realize the value of you as opposed to the medical side. I really, really like that aspect, Dr. Janice. That is really cool. So, um, I know you're a busy person like I am. I promised you I'd keep this between 30 and 35 minutes. So I would like for you to give your final statements and how people can get a hold of you and be patient with you because you're a busy, busy lady. And so, if you would go ahead and do that, and then we'll close out our show.
Okay, thank you so much again for having me here, Mary. I do appreciate you. And yes, indeed, we are going to have you on the fireside chat before the end of this year, too, because we're going to be closing this year in a bang. But my work really is, and my focus is really to see every human being as a whole, and just to know that we cannot separate their physical, their emotional, and their spiritual needs. So, my work really every day is to ensure that all of these different parts of the human being come into alignment, come into balance, and that the only way to do that is to view man, human being, for who they are from the temperament point of view, their traits, their tendencies, the things that they tend to do. And in a nutshell, that is what I do. On the other side, I do leadership training as well. Having spent over 15 years in top leadership, I do leadership training as well. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what I do. It gets a little bit busy sometimes for all of us, and including you too, Mary. I do know that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to show you this real quick. This is what Annette does on our show, and I believe Annette's in Canada. So
Oh, love it. Self care warrior. I love that name. Wow, I need to connect as well. I love that, Annette. I love what you do. Those last two words, kindness and compassion.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Annette, I don't know if Dr. Janice, are you on Facebook or are you just on LinkedIn?
No, I'm Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the same name, Dr. Janice Brooks.
All right. So there's your opportunity, Annette. She's on all three that we use here. So, yeah, Annette has been a real nice source for me because 10 minutes before I jump on here, I'm like, mind blown. I'm done. So, but with that, Dr. Janice, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end my show, and then I'm going to come back and have a couple closing comments with you.
Sure. Thank you so much.